we're in a position to create the most responsible, most transformative, and boldest state budget in modern history.
The unprecedented $262.6 billion budget is officially signed and in motion. It includes the extension of eviction moratorium, another round of $600 stimulus checks for those who qualify, and a $100 billion in new money. But does this spending plan address some bigger needs like wildfire prevention, water storage, and high-speed rail? Well, joining me now is the Republican state senator representing the 8th District, which makes up a good portion of the Central Valley, Borgeas. Welcome back and happy 4th. How are you?
Alexander, it's great to be back on the show.
Well, we have a lot to digest, lots to talk about. State budget finally signed this last week and now ready for the governor's signature. Does this budget, $262 billion, truly indicate the state and the 5th largest economy in the world is roaring back like the governor says?
Well, I think by every indication, we are opening up and the economy is indeed coming back to life. But I think to think that we're out of the woods yet would be a mistake. And more importantly, we shouldn't be thinking that the surplus that California has is something that's going to continue. I believe it's going to be finite. And at the rate at which spending is occurring, it is certainly going to dissipate and eventually go away. So this budget process is also a bit of a misnomer, is because it's a moving target. Normally, budgets are once a year, but not in California. They're on a rolling basis. And that's the reason why we are doing trailer bill after trailer bill, even after it was introduced in June.
Well, there's one thing and something you fought hard to get, which was the drought emergency recognized by the governor. There you were with a bipartisan group of your colleagues standing right there in the middle of the Central Valley saying, hey, we have no water here. We're not going to have any water. There's no water storage. So $3 billion was put into the budget for water, but it did not offer a dime for water storage. This is after Newsom, as you know, did declare the drought emergency for portions of the state. So what does that mean?
So I think from our standpoint in the Central Valley, in fact, we had a roundtable at Fresno State a couple of weeks ago that brought together folks from the contractor level to the water district, all the way up to the county, state, and federal folks. We all kind of came together, and our strongest play within the Central Valley is to work together and make budget plays for investment in SGMA compliance and other infrastructure bills, including Bryant Kern Canal. The days where the governor is willing to invest in water storage, he has given absolutely no indication that this is a priority. And based on the recall politics, the way that I see it, it's unlikely that he is going to change his spots on this issue. So we are going to be constantly dealing with a lack of investment infrastructure when it comes to water storage, and that's going to hurt us in the valley and within ag long term. So we're making the best of a really tough situation from the Central Valley leadership position, but you know what? The governor does not seem to want to risk alienating the environmentalists in Sacramento in the course of a recall.
Another shocker in this budget spending plan, no money designated for high-speed rail, and California Democrats were okay with that. How should we interpret that?
You know, I'm having a hard time not rolling my eyes as we move from subject to subject because there is a lot to be concerned about within California. Yes, we understand that President Biden and the U.S. Congress are likely to move federal money back into the high-speed rail project, but not at the state level. And that is where I think things are very concerning, is that if this was such a priority, not just with the present administration, but the previous one under former Governor Brown, this seems to be a major play by the coastal powers to drain out the dollars that were put into the ballot initiative for high-speed rail and reallocate it for other transportation-related projects, but on the coast, not the valley.
Well, I want to finish with this. When you talk about line items in the budget, and we heard about that bombshell of a report on the wildfire prevention by NPR out of Sacramento last week, and it showed Newsom claimed that 35 priority projects carried out as a result of his executive order resulted in fire prevention work on 90,000 acres. That's what he said, but the data showed that actual number is only 11,399. What do you make of that? And I'm wondering how much of that really impacted the Creek Fire.
Well, I think hyperbole is something that we've grown accustomed to with the current administration, and certainly in the context of a recall. And I don't want to be really cynical about how I explain this, but in this recall environment, I think you're seeing a lot of representations, a lot of promises, and frankly, a lot of misrepresentations. And that is just the latest example of how much commitment does the governor have to the Central Valley, foothill, and mountain communities. We haven't seen it too much, but we've certainly seen a lot of fanfare as he claims victory for a number of investments across the state. So he's not short on taking credit for a lot of things. Unfortunately, when folks dug deep, we realized that there was hyperbole, or even worse, misrepresentation, and that is what we are seeing, especially in a recall context.
Let me finish with this, and I know that we talked months ago and you really weren't sure of how you were going to approach the recall, but we are going to have a recall election, as you know, $215 million now in the budget for it, and so that means they can move it up according to a state law. And then Newsom actually filed a lawsuit against his Secretary of State this week after he missed the deadline putting his party affiliation on the ballot or on his notice to the Secretary of State. What do you make of all this that's going on, especially with the lawsuit against his own Secretary of State?
Honestly, I think if this were a Hollywood script, it might be a bit too unbelievable. Apparently in 2020, this governor signed off on the exact procedures for recall, which articulated a set period of time within which a recalled candidate had to identify their party affiliation. Well, that didn't occur, apparently, and now the governor is suing his own appointed Secretary of State. And from my stance and from my vantage point, rules are rules, and you have to follow those whether you like them or not. And under these circumstances, it appears as if the Secretary of State is abiding by the letter of the statute, and the governor is not terribly happy with that being the case, and is pledging to take this to the courts. We'll see. We'll see what the judiciary has to say about this. But I think it's another example that that Governor Newsom has no problem, including the state legislature, in expediting recall calendars when it's beneficial, or extending and delaying them when it's also beneficial. So this is unfortunately the byproduct of supermajority rule in California. And we have to go along with the roller coaster ride, and that is unfortunate.
Andreas Borgeas, State Senator, we appreciate the time. Take care.
Thank you, Alexandre. Take care.
Well, up next, as that recall election ramps up, Caitlyn Jenner ready to take her campaign on the road. But is it more about publicity or politics? One-on-one with the reality star turned gubernatorial candidate.